Hi, I'm Patty. I'm a jewelry designer here at Fire Mountain Gems and Beads, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make this beautiful breast cancer awareness affirmation charm bracelet. For those of you who are fighting the fight or supporting someone who is, or just ready to support anyone out there that needs your good vibes, here is a great bracelet that you can wear to show that you're with them. We do have these great coordinating earrings that we made for breast cancer awareness as well. If you would like to make this project, we did do a video on these. Go to the website and type in M like Mary, E3F like Frank. Okay, so let's look at some of the materials in this bracelet. First, we're going to do some Accu-flex. That's the base of this bracelet, 49 strand, 0.019 diameter with the clear coating. And here are the rest of our materials. We've got these great Preciosa bicones. They're so brilliant and beautiful. They come in so many colors. These would be great for any affirmation charm jewelry that you'd like to make. Some rose quartz rondelles, some really beautiful antique silver rondelles here, the hope charm, the wonderful breast cancer awareness ribbon charm. We've got a lobster claw clasp, some Accu-guards that protect the Accu-flex, crimps, a couple of sizes of jump rings, and the crimp covers. That's all there is to it. This project is great. It doesn't take any real special skill set. You can learn to do it very quickly. Anyone can make this. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and pull off about 10 inches of my Accu-flex. That's kind of standard when I'm doing a bracelet. I take about that much. It's a little bit extra, but it gives me some wiggle room to work. You would always rather want just a little bit more than a little bit less when you're working with stringing material. So the first thing I'll do is go ahead and finish off one end of the bracelet with an Accu-guard. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and grab a crimp bead. These are little 2x2 sterling crimp beads, and just slide that onto the Accu-flex and let it just kind of fall down a couple of inches. Then my Accu-guard is a horseshoe. There's a little opening on both sides. I'm going to go through the bottom on one side, around the top of the horseshoe, and down through the side, through the bottom of the other side here. 1 second. There we go. And I'll pull that up a little bit, and then I slide my tail through the crimp beads, so both sides of the Accu-flex are through the crimp. And I pull those all down nice and snug. Then I'm going to want to close up my little Accu-guard, and I'll use my crimping plier, the outside of that. There are these little grooves in the crimping plier, so the very outside groove. And then I pull it all nice and snug. Now, before I crimp that crimp bead closed, I'm going to measure just 1 millimeter or so, not too far, just maybe 1 millimeter, 1.5 millimeters, down from the Accu-guard. You want just a little bit of Accu-flex showing because you're going to put a crimp cover over that crimp bead and you need a little space. So I'm going to go ahead and crimp my bead, that middle groove of the crimping pliers. And I like to kind of crimp it extra tight. And then I'll round out that crimp with the outside of the pliers here. And then I kind of close it a little bit extra with the flat part on the outside. So we've got a really nice tight crimped end, and I really like to tug on it to make sure it's not going anywhere. And it doesn't look very pretty, but we're putting a crimp cover over that, so that's okay. Now I'm going to take my flush cutters, and I'm going to very carefully, only cutting the short tail, snip that off right below. And I got to make sure I don't get my other wire in there. There we go. Right below the crimp. Okay, so now I'm going to grab my little crimp cover, and I like to use the outside kind of groove of my crimp tool here to put that around my crimp and gently close that up. And then I kind of go around it in a round fashion and just make sure it's nicely closed, just gently. Okay. All right, so we've got one end of the bracelet finished there. Now you just do the stringing. So I'm going to set my other little findings aside till we get to the end. And you just follow the pattern on the bracelet. So we're going to start with one of the silver-plated rondelles, 3 of these beautiful Preciosa bicones, and remember, it's always up to your creativity. You can change it up however you want it. Okay, one more of the rondelles here, the silver-plated. And then we put in this beautiful rose quartz rondelle as an accent bead. Another silver-plated rondelle. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just keep following this pattern, finish this up, and I'll be right back with you. Okay, so now you can see that I've got most of the pattern finished. I'm just going to put the last few beads on. So we'll do a silver-plated rondelle, a rose quartz rondelle, another silver-plated rondelle. I love the combination of the gemstones with the crystals, it's so nice. Preciosa bicone. Okay, the last Preciosa bicone here, and one more of the silver-plated rondelles, and that will finish up the strung pattern. So the next step is to finish off the other end of the bracelet. So we've got this end crimped. Let's crimp this end. I'm going to go ahead and first put on one of these little crimp beads. Sometimes it's actually easier to string them off of the mat, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. They're so small. Okay. And then my Accu-guard, which really nicely protects my AccuFlex and also makes a really nice finish at the end. I'm going to go through the bottom there, around the horseshoe, and through the other side and out the bottom. And then that tail will go through the crimp bead. And when I have this little space to work with, it's sometimes really nice to get your pliers and grab kind of not the end, but toward the end, and then manipulate that into the crimp bead. That way you're not fumbling with your fingers, are a lot more clumsy than pliers, at least mine are. Okay, so I've got both tails there through the crimp bead. Then I'm going to grab it with my plier, and I'm just going to pull everything tight, almost tight. Okay. And then before I can pull it fully tight, I need to close up that Accu-guard. So let me grab my crimp pliers. There we go. And then I'm going to tighten everything up really nice and tight. And now before I finish that off, I want to just make sure that there's a millimeter of space between the crimp bead on either side, between the beads and then between the Accu-guard. So I'm just going to move it around a little bit so I make sure that I'm leaving a little space, because we need space for that crimp cover to go on either side. That looks pretty good. Then I can go ahead and crimp the crimp bead, that middle barrel of my crimp tool. Really nice and tight. I like to do it a couple times. And then I'm going to close it up. And then I like to use just the outside edge there to kind of crimp it flat. That looks really good. Okay. Next, I'm going to go ahead and cut off that little bit of tail, and be real sure that you're not cutting the other wire, and do it as close to the crimp as you can, just like that. Okay, then I'm going to grab my crimp cover with the outside groove of my crimp tool, and I usually like to hold the Accu-guard so I have control of where the crimp cover is going, and then close it up nice and tight and just kind of go around a little bit in a circle and round it out. Make sure the seam is all the way closed. And there we go. So now we need to put on the clasp and the charms. So I'm going to grab my little hope charm and my awareness ribbon and a couple of the small jump rings. Oops. There we go. So we can see, I'm going to unclasp this so we can better see the end. So less confusing to your eyes. So you can see at this end, we've got our charms on the larger jump ring attached to both a small jump ring here and the lobster claw. So I'm going to grab my lobster claw and one of the larger jump rings here. Oh, there's already one on the lobster claw. That's great. Okay. One more little jump ring, and then that will complete that end. So the first thing I'll do is go ahead and take one of these small jump rings. Sometimes it's easier to kind of pick it up with the tools. And I place the jump ring so the opening is right near the edge of the pliers that I'm holding it with. And I just rock that out open. And I'm going to add the end of my bracelet, doesn't matter which end, and the lobster claw that already has a jump ring on it. I'm going to go ahead and close that up. This particular lobster claw comes with the jump ring, some don't, it just depends. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and add the charms to that jump ring below the lobster claw. So I'm going to grab another of these little 4mm jump rings, and I'm opening up that sideways. You always want to open your jump ring sideways. Putting on a charm, and then adding the lobster claw on the jump ring. Okay. There's that one, and then we'll do one more for the ribbon charm. Okay, opening that up sideways, putting on the ribbon, and we'll add that right next to, on the same side as the hope charm on that jump ring. Close it up, kind of rock the tips together a little bit, make sure you got a nice tight connection. All right, that end is finished. So if we look at the other end of the bracelet, all we need to do is add a large jump ring. Pick that up with my pliers. Position that so the opening is right at the tip of the pliers. Open it sideways. And then just add that onto the end of my bracelet. And there you have your beautiful breast cancer awareness bracelet. Thank you so much for being with us here today. I hope you've enjoyed this project. And make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you next time.